You know, if you had to pick just one artist who defined the 20th century, there's a really good chance you'd say Pablo Picasso. For decades, he wasn't just part of modern art, he pretty much was modern art. He was this towering figure who completely changed what a painting or a sculpture could even be. So let's get into the story of the man who didn't just play by the rules of art, he completely rewrote the rulebook. First off, his career was just unbelievably long. From his very first serious pieces as a teenager all the way to his final paintings, Picasso was working, creating, for an incredible 78 years. I mean, just think about that. That's an entire lifetime spent constantly changing, constantly reinventing himself. And the amount of work he produced, it's almost hard to wrap your head around. When he passed away, his estate had over 45,000 unsold works in it. And that wasn't even everything he ever made. That was just what was left. We're talking paintings, sculptures, ceramics, drawings, literally enough art to fill a massive museum. So this all leads to a really big question, right? How did this one guy from Spain become the undisputed father of modern art? What was it about his vision that let him not just master the old rules, but completely tear them up and write new ones for everybody else to follow? Well, that's what we're going to unpack. To really get it, we have to understand that Picasso wasn't just another painter. He was a true phenomenon. His influence went way beyond art galleries. He created this huge cultural earthquake, and we're still feeling the tremors today. I mean, the scale of his impact is just wild. People don't compare him to other artists. They compare him to what Shakespeare did for literature or what Freud did for psychology. That's how deep his changes went. He co-founded Cubism, a whole new way of seeing the world. He invented constructed sculpture, basically making art out of anything he could find. And yeah, he co-invented collage, blurring the line between a painting and the real world forever. But here's the crazy part. Before he became this total revolutionary, Picasso was an absolute master of the traditional stuff. His journey didn't start by breaking the rules. It started by knowing them so perfectly, so completely, that it made his later work that much more radical. It seems like he was just born to do it. The family story goes that his very first words weren't mama or papa. Nope, they were bis bis, his baby talk attempt at saying lápiz, which is Spanish for pencil. From the absolute beginning, the guy was just wired to draw. And his talent just exploded. At 7, he's getting formal training from his dad, who is an art professor. By the time he's 13, his father, in this almost mythical moment, sees his son's work, feels totally outmatched, and legend says he just gave up painting for good. That same year, at 13, he gets into an advanced class at a top art school. By 16, he's at the Royal Academy in Madrid, the best art school in all of Spain. This wasn't just a kid who was good at drawing, he was a full-blown prodigy. Now, with that much skill, Picasso could have just spent his whole life being a famous traditional painter. But a tragedy completely changed his path. A close friend of his committed suicide, and it plunged Picasso into a deep depression. Suddenly, his art wasn't about technical skill anymore. It became all about raw emotion. He started his blue period, painting scenes of poverty and sadness, all soaked in these haunting shades of blue. This is when his art got deeply, painfully personal. Okay, so he'd mastered tradition. Then he poured all this powerful emotion into it. Now, Picasso's ready for his next move, to do what no one thought was possible and just completely shatter the foundations of Western art. See, for hundreds of years, painting in the West had a pretty clear set of rules, right? You were supposed to create this realistic illusion of space from one single viewpoint. The people in the paintings were supposed to look idealized and beautiful. Everything was smooth and blended. And of course, there was a clear line between the person in the front and the wall in the back. Those were the rules for like 500 years. And then, in 1907, Picasso unleashes Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. And it just blew everything up. It's a painting of 5 nudes, but like nothing anyone had ever seen. The bodies are made of these flat, jagged, sharp planes. Their faces look like ancient masks from Iberian and African sculptures. The background and foreground are all smashed together. This wasn't just a new style of painting. It was a declaration of war on tradition. And Picasso himself said it best. With Les Demoiselles, he had to destroy the old way of seeing things in order to create something totally new. He wasn't just pushing art forward. He was basically setting off a bomb in the middle of it to see what he could build from the wreckage. And out of that wreckage, from all those shattered pieces of tradition, Picasso and another artist, Georges Braque, started to build something brand new. It would become the first major art movement of the 20th century, Cubism. So, Cubism kind of came in two stages. First, you had analytic Cubism. They'd take something like a person or a guitar, and they'd break it down into all its basic geometric shapes, and then show you all those shapes from different angles all at the same time. This just obliterated that 500-year-old rule of a single viewpoint. Then came synthetic Cubism, which was the total opposite. Instead of taking things apart, they started building images up, putting them together from bits of newspaper or wallpaper or whatever. And that's how collage was born. But Picasso's breakthroughs were never just about making cool-looking pictures. As the world started spiraling into war in the 1930s, he was about to show everyone that art could be way more than something pretty on a wall. It could be a weapon. In 1937, in the middle of the Spanish Civil War, Nazi bombers, flying for the Spanish nationalist leader Francisco Franco, dropped bombs all over the small Basque town of Guernica. It was a horrific, brutal attack on civilians. And this event completely changed how Picasso saw his own work. He said that painting wasn't just for decorating apartments anymore. He came to see it as an instrument of war, a tool you could use to fight back against cruelty and evil. His response was immediate, and it was huge. The painting Guernica. It's this enormous, chaotic mural showing nothing but death and suffering. He painted it all in black, white, and gray, so it looks like a horrifying newspaper photo. You don't see any planes or bombs. What you see is the result. The screaming mothers, the dead soldiers, the absolute terror. It's still probably the single most powerful anti-war painting ever made. So, innovator, master, activist, Picasso was all of it. But to really get a handle on his legacy, you have to look at the man himself, who was every bit as complex and contradictory as his art. The thing about Picasso's career is that he was always two things at once. He was the revolutionary who tore down tradition, but then he'd have these periods where he'd go back to painting in a super realistic, classical style. He invented all these new ways of making art, but then he spent his later years obsessed with the old masters, doing his own versions of their famous paintings. He was always arguing with the past and the future at the same time. And his personal life? Just as complicated. He was a dedicated member of the Communist Party. His love life was notoriously stormy. We're talking multiple wives, mistresses, kids with different women. And lately, his legacy has been looked at in a new light, with many pointing out that he could be a misogynist and that his genius was often fueled by the drama and pain of the women around him. These aren't easy things to talk about, but they're a huge part of his story. So, who was the real Picasso? Was he the greatest artist of his time, a relentless innovator, or a kind of tyrant in his personal life? The truth is, like one of his Cubist paintings, you have to look at it from all sides at once. His legacy is complicated, it's debated, and in the end, it's just as fractured and fascinating as the masterpieces he gave to the world.